Let me tell you what happened yesterday. A guy named AJ was live streaming near Nancy's neighborhood, just walking around, filming. He does this. A lot of people do this now. And he found a bone. A human bone. He called the police. He kept filming. And within about 15 minutes, every platform following this case just erupted. I watched it happen in real time. The comments, the shares, the same question appearing in thousands of places at once. Is this her? Is this Nancy? I'm not going to pretend I didn't feel it too. There is something that happens to you when you've been following a case for 95 days, and suddenly there's a bone 7 miles from her house. Your brain does the thing. It goes there. The police got there fast. They called in the University of Arizona Anthropology Department. They looked at the bone, and then they said the thing that ended the breath holding. Prehistoric, not Nancy, not connected, ancient, thousands of years old. The desert around Tucson is full of these, apparently. The Hohokam people lived there for over 1,000 years. Their bones are in that ground, and AJ found one. I keep thinking about what that moment felt like. Not just for me watching the stream, but for the people who actually live in that neighborhood, who have been living 95 days of this, who hear about every bone, every tip, every possible lead, who have to go through the "is this it" moment every single time something surfaces in a 5-mile radius of their street. That's what this investigation has done to a community. It has made them hold their breath for prehistoric bones. Now let me tell you about Savannah. The same day. Yesterday. About 90 minutes into the Today Show, she left. No explanation. Craig Melvin came back from wherever they cut to and said she had to leave a little early. She'll be right back tomorrow. This is the second time. April 15th was the first. Here's the thing about that. There's a protocol at NBC. A source told the Daily Mail about it back in April. If a producer needs to pull Savannah off air because there's news about Nancy, there's a specific phrase they use. Needed offset. That's the phrase. And the plan is that another anchor reports the breaking news at the same moment Savannah is being told in a back office. The people following this case know about that protocol now, which means every time Savannah leaves the Today Show early, they do the math. April 15th. She left. No explanation. The internet held its breath for a while. Nothing happened. No official updates. Yesterday, she left. Craig said she'll be right back tomorrow. She was. The phrase matters. She'll be right back tomorrow is Craig telling you it wasn't the protocol. Because if it were the protocol, there wouldn't be a tomorrow to promise. But here's what I keep coming back to. This is the second time in less than a month. Something is happening in Savannah's life, in this investigation, that is making it hard for her to finish the broadcast sometimes. And we don't know what that is. We might not know for a long time. She goes back to work every morning, in yellow. She said in March that she wakes up every night in the middle of the night, and in the darkness she imagines her mother's terror. And then she goes back to the desk and she does the show. That is the most specific definition of carrying something I have ever heard. Now I want to talk about something from Wednesday's NewsNation special that I didn't cover yesterday because the bone story broke and took everything over. Gary Brucato described the executor, the person on the doorbell camera, in 3 words: cruel, sadistic, scheming. Those aren't interchangeable. Each one means something different. Cruel is someone who gets something out of hurting people. Not accidentally, not as a side effect of what they're doing. Deliberately. There's something in it for them. Sadistic is more specific. The sadist isn't just hurting someone, they're watching them suffer. They're experiencing the suffering. That's the part that matters to them. Scheming is about planning. This person thinks ahead, sets things up. They don't act on impulse and hope for the best. They design situations that will produce the outcome they want. Put those 3 together, and you're describing someone who planned to cause suffering, who chose a target specifically because of the suffering it would cause, and who has been experiencing that suffering from wherever they are for 95 days. Brucato said this is a long-standing pattern. This isn't new behavior. This person has been like this for a long time. There are incidents, reports, records. Casey Jordan said he's probably 27 or 28. Definitely local. Quit his job on the day the story broke. Left his girlfriend, left town. Mexico or eliminated. Those are the 2 options she gave. And neither one of them is good. Here's what I keep thinking about. Someone watched him do all of that on February 1st. Someone was around a young local guy who suddenly quit his job and left his girlfriend and disappeared on the exact day that the Nancy Guthrie story broke nationally. And that person has been watching 95 days of coverage and listening to these profiles and maybe, slowly, putting it together. The tip line is anonymous. $1 million. One phone call. The bone at Craycrofton River is prehistoric. Savannah was back on the Today Show this morning. The search continues. The profile is getting more specific every day, and somewhere in this city someone knows. If you have information about Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, call the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI. That's 1-800-225-5324. You can also go to tips.fbi.gov or call 520-351-4900. The reward is over $1 million, completely anonymous. Hit like. Subscribe to Forensic Disconnect, and tell me in the comments, when you saw that live stream yesterday, did you hold your breath? I want to know. Day 95. The bone was prehistoric. The search continues. See you tomorrow. Actually, let me back up for a second, because I think there's something about yesterday that's worth sitting with before we move on. 95 days ago, this was a missing person case. A local story out of Tucson, Arizona. An 84-year-old woman didn't show up to her virtual church service. Her daughter came to check on her. The back doors were open. Now there are YouTube channels dedicated to walking around her neighborhood looking for bones. I'm not criticizing AJ. He called the police immediately. He handled it responsibly. But the fact that this is what the ecosystem around this case looks like now, content creators in the desert, live streaming, finding prehistoric bones, that tells you something about how much this case has changed since February. It's become this enormous thing, this national collective experience. Tens of thousands of people following every development, watching every expert, tracking every departure from the Today Show. And Nancy is still missing. There's a version of this where all of that attention is useful, where one of those 30,000 tips is from someone who was watching a live stream and connected something they saw to something they knew, where the scale of the public interest is part of what breaks the case. And there's a version where it's just noise, where the sheer volume of content and commentary and speculation makes it harder to hear the signal when it comes. The FBI is trying to work in the second version while hoping to benefit from the first. They've released what they need to release. The doorbell camera footage, the tip line numbers, the description of the suspect, and they've protected everything else. The motive, the 911 calls, the evidence that someone said would light a fire if people knew what investigators had. I think about that phrase a lot. Light a fire. What could they possibly have that would light a fire, given everything that's already out there? Given that we already know about the blood and the bone and the Bitcoin and the hair and the blockchain and the puppet master theory, what is left to know that would be more explosive than what we already know? I don't have an answer. But I think about it. Let me tell you about the SWAT raid, because Brian Entin talked about it on the special, and I think it deserves more attention than it's gotten. About 2 weeks into the investigation, so around February 15th, the Sheriff's Department deployed SWAT, a full tactical operation, about 2 miles from Nancy's house. Entin was there, inside the perimeter, live on NewsNation. He watched them go into a house and detain a man named Luke Daly and his mother. He watched them pull someone from a traffic stop at a Culver's nearby. He said, "At that point, I thought maybe this was it. Maybe they were going to find who was responsible." Think about what that means. The reporter who has been covering this case every single day, who has the best sources of anyone outside the investigation, who has been right about more developments in this case than any other journalist. He was inside the perimeter watching a SWAT operation, and he thought this was the resolution. It wasn't. Luke Daly had nothing to do with it. He said so publicly. He gave an interview. He just wanted Nancy to come home. But here's the thing about the SWAT raid that I can't stop thinking about. A SWAT deployment doesn't happen because of a hunch. It happens because of specific, credible intelligence. The kind of intelligence that makes a law enforcement agency believe that the people at a specific address represent a real and immediate threat. So there was specific, credible intelligence that led SWAT to that house 2 miles from Nancy's home 2 weeks into the investigation, and it didn't produce an arrest. Which means either the intelligence was wrong, or it was right about the location and wrong about the specific people there, or there's something else going on that we don't have visibility into. None of those options are comfortable. All of them mean the investigation has had moments of genuine forward momentum that haven't resolved. Moments when the gap between where the investigation was and where the answer is seemed small enough that Brian Entin thought it was over. Those moments will come again. They have to. Because the blockchain is permanent, and the hair is at Astrea, and the genealogy process works. It will just take longer than any of us want it to. Now let me go back to the bone for a second, because there's a detail about it that I haven't talked about yet. The location. Craycroft and River. 7 miles from the Catalina foothills. 7 miles is not nothing. 7 miles in the Tucson Desert, in the specific direction that the geography of this investigation has consistently pointed toward, south, toward the border, toward Sonora. 7 miles puts you in the kind of terrain where things can be left and not found for a long time. The prehistoric bone was thousands of years old, and it was just sitting there, in the open desert, until a YouTube streamer happened to walk by and look at the right patch of ground. The Sonoran Desert around Tucson is enormous. The terrain is complex. There are arroyos and washes and areas that don't get foot traffic for months at a time. The Madres Buscadoras de Sonora, the volunteer searchers from Mexico who offered to help in this investigation and were turned down by Nanos, have been finding bodies in this landscape for years. Not prehistoric bones, recent remains. People who were left in the desert and weren't found until someone went looking. Cece Moore has said from the beginning, wherever Nancy was taken, she and the perpetrators occupied a shared space. That space exists. It has evidence in it, and it hasn't been found yet. The bone at Craycroft and River wasn't it, but the person who found it was in the right kind of place, searching the right kind of landscape. And the people who watched that live stream and held their breath for 2 hours, they were participating in the largest unofficial search operation this case has produced. That search is going to continue. It was going to continue whether or not the bone was prehistoric, because 95 days of not knowing does something to people. It makes them need to do something. Even if that something is walking through the desert with a camera and a YouTube channel, I understand that impulse completely. One more thing before I close this out. Kash Patel said the FBI was kept out of the investigation for 4 days. 4 days. In the first critical window, when the crime scene was freshest, when the evidence was most intact, when the DNA testing that the FBI would have conducted might have, his word, gotten better information, or more information. 4 days. The Pima County Sheriff's Department pushed back. They said coordination began without delay. They said the FBI was promptly notified. They said decisions about evidence processing were made based on operational needs. Those two accounts can't both be completely right. Either the FBI was kept out for 4 days, or it wasn't. Kash Patel said it was. He said it publicly on a podcast with his name attached to it. Not through a spokesperson. Not through a statement. He said it himself. The director of the FBI said the FBI was kept out of this investigation for 4 days in the first critical window. And the man who was running the investigation in those 4 days is the same man who sent the hair sample to a private lab in Florida instead of the FBI when the FBI asked for it, who deployed SWAT and didn't get a resolution, who submitted a 22-page letter that wasn't under oath to the Board of Supervisors, who said no regrets. The board meets on May 13th. That's 6 days from now. 95 days since Nancy was taken, 4 days when the FBI was kept out, 6 days until the board meets again. The bone was prehistoric. Savannah will be back tomorrow. The investigation is still building. See you tomorrow. Let me talk about the protocol thing a little more, because I've been thinking about it since April and I don't think we've really sat with what it means. NBC built a system, a specific, deliberate, choreographed system for the moment when there is news about Nancy. They thought through exactly what that moment looks like. A producer walks up to Savannah in a commercial break, says a specific phrase. She knows immediately what it means. She goes off camera. She goes into a back office. And at the same moment, another anchor starts reporting it as breaking news. They rehearsed this, or at least they planned it in enough detail that everyone who needs to know what to do knows what to do. I've worked in television. I understand why you plan for this. You plan for it because you can't let it be chaotic. You can't have a moment that significant just happen without any structure around it. The kindest thing you can do for Savannah and for the audience is to have a plan. But think about what it means that the plan exists. It means NBC sat in a room and said, "This moment is coming. We don't know when, but it is coming. And when it does, here is exactly what we do." They've been running that plan in the background every single morning since April 6th. Every morning, Savannah walks onto that set. Every producer in that building knows the phrase is loaded and ready. Every commercial break is a moment where the phrase could be said. And then she leaves twice without explanation in less than a month, and the entire community that follows this case does the math simultaneously. That's what 95 days does. It turns a morning show into a vigil. I want to be honest about something. I don't know what's going on inside Savannah's life right now. I don't know why she left on May 6th. Could be a development in the case. Could be something personal that has nothing to do with Nancy. Could be exhaustion. Could be a dozen things. Craig said she'll be right back tomorrow, and she was. But I understand why the community responds the way it does. I understand the held breath, the math, the is this it? Because when you've been following someone's grief for 3 months, when you've watched Savannah give interviews where she describes waking up every night imagining her mother's terror, you become invested in the resolution in a way that feels personal, even though you've never met either of them. You want it to be over. You want her to get an answer, even if the answer is terrible, because at least a terrible answer ends the not knowing. That's the ache and the wonder the family described, and it's contagious. It spreads to everyone watching. The prehistoric bone is not the answer. May 6th was not the moment, but the next time will be the same. The math will happen again. The breath will be held again, until the day it isn't held, until the day it turns out to be the moment. Okay, let me tell you about something from the special that I think got lost in the shuffle. Ann Burgess said this is a type of case we've never seen before. She's been doing this for 50 years. She interviewed Ted Bundy. She built the framework that the FBI uses to profile violent offenders. When she says she's never seen a case like this, I take that seriously. What makes it different? She said it was well planned. They got away with it. That phrase, got away with it, is past tense. Like it's done. Like the operation is complete and the people behind it believe they've succeeded. Think about that for a second. The architect of this crime, whoever designed it, whoever wrote those ransom notes, whoever created the Bitcoin wallet and sent it to TMZ instead of the family, that person, sitting wherever they are right now, believes they got away with it. They believe the operation is complete. The outcome they wanted has been delivered for 95 days. Savannah has been suffering publicly on national television. The family has been living in the ache and the wonder. The investigation has not named them. The blockchain hasn't reached them publicly. The hair is still being analyzed. From where they sit, it worked. And here's the thing about that. Burgess said it, Jordan said it, Brucato said it in different ways. When someone gets away with something and believes they got away with something, they do something with that. They relax a little. They get comfortable. The ego that Brucato described, the hothead who needs to know they got away with it, that ego eventually does something that creates a problem. It talks. It watches the coverage a little too closely. It reacts to something that it shouldn't react to. It makes a small mistake that, viewed through the lens of everything investigators know, stops being small. The FBI has been watching for that mistake for 95 days. I want to talk about Casey Jordan's profile one more time, because the specific detail about quitting the job and breaking up with the girlfriend on February 1st, that detail is the most actionable thing any expert has said publicly in 95 days. Here's why. Most of what we know about the executor is visual. The height, the build, the backpack, the mask. None of that helps the person who knew him identify him. You can't look at the doorbell camera footage and think, oh, that's my neighbor Dave, because Dave is about that height and owns a black backpack. But quitting his job and breaking up with his girlfriend on the day the story broke nationally, that's specific. That's a behavior that a specific set of people observed. His employer on February 1st, his girlfriend, anyone who was around him that day and noticed the abrupt, radical change, that person exists. They've been watching this case for 95 days, and now they have a profile that matches what they saw. Not a physical description, a behavioral one. The thing that made them think something was off about their coworker or their friend's boyfriend or the guy in their building on February 1st. That thing now has a name attached to it. Prowler burglar, late 20s, local, hothead, cruel, sadistic, scheming. If that matches someone you knew who disappeared from your life on February 1st, 2026, I'm asking you directly. Call the FBI. 1-800-CALL-FBI. It's anonymous. It's $1 million. And it might be the call that ends 95 days of not knowing for a family that can only ache and wonder. The bone was prehistoric. Savannah is back tomorrow. The board meets in 6 days. The investigation is building. The search continues. And the person at the center of this has been watching us watch them for 95 days. They think they got away with it. They haven't. Not yet. But they believe it. And that belief is going to make them do something that connects the dots. See you tomorrow. One thing I haven't touched on yet that came out of the special and deserves its own moment. The rush to judgment. Entin had a source. Someone inside the investigation. talking on condition of anonymity. And what they said about the first hours of February 1st, 2026, is the most damning thing anyone close to this investigation has said publicly. They said there was an immediate rush to judgment, that Nancy had somehow wandered off, an 84-year-old woman, blood on the front step confirmed as hers, back doors propped open, phone and purse and medication all left behind, pacemaker silent since 2:28 in the morning. And the first conclusion reached was that she wandered off. I've tried to understand how that happens, how you look at that scene and decide wandered off, and the only explanation that makes sense to me is institutional inertia. The default assumption for a missing elderly person is the benign one. She got confused. She went for a walk. She'll turn up. That default assumption exists because most of the time, for most missing elderly people, it's correct. They do wander. They do get confused. They do turn up. But the blood on the front step is not consistent with wandering. The propped open back doors are not consistent with wandering. The disabled doorbell camera is not consistent with wandering. Those things are consistent with a crime scene. And the people who processed that scene on the morning of February 1st looked at all of it and went with the benign assumption anyway. 33 days. That's how long the wrong framework ran the investigation. 33 days of search and rescue when it should have been 33 days of criminal investigation. 33 days of the gap between what actually happened and what the investigation thought happened. The FBI director confirmed it. 4 days where the FBI was kept out. 4 days where the only people on that case were the ones who had already decided it was a wandering. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. Those 33 days mattered. They mattered in ways that may never be fully known. What evidence degraded? What surveillance footage got overwritten? What memories faded? What leads went cold before they were even identified as leads? That's the cost. And the person who made the decisions that produced that cost is submitting unsworn letters to a board of supervisors and saying no regrets. The board meets in 6 days. On May 13th, they're going to evaluate that letter, the one that explained 8 suspensions and a resignation in lieu of termination as a towing dispute, the one that wasn't under oath. Supervisor Christie, the Republican on the board, said it wasn't worth the paper it was written on. Both sides of the aisle. Both Hines and Christie. Not worth the paper it was written on. And not under oath. I don't know what happens on May 13th. I don't know if the board votes to remove him. I don't know if the perjury referral at the Department of Justice goes anywhere. I don't know if the recall gets its signatures by July 10th. What I know is that the accountability conversation in this case has reached the Attorney General level. Todd Blanche commented on it this week. The FBI director commented on it. These are not local law enforcement stories anymore. This is a federal accountability story. And Nancy is still out there somewhere, waiting to be found. The bone at Craycroft and River was prehistoric. Savannah left the Today Show again and came back the next day. The SWAT raid produced no arrests. The FBI was kept out for 4 days. The letter wasn't under oath. And in a laboratory in San Francisco, a team is working on a hair that Cece Moore says could make this case solvable. I'll be here tomorrow with whatever comes next. If you have any information, anything at all, call 1-800-CALL-FBI. That's 1-800-225-5324, or go to tips.fbi.gov or call 520-351-4900. $1 million, completely anonymous, and you might be the person who ends this. Day 95. The search continues. See you tomorrow.